Hey everyone, this is Zach with 8020 Media, here today with a video on maintenance mistakes that can hurt your engine. Vehicle maintenance and service intervals are incredibly important, and they are there for a reason and should be followed. However, a lot of us do make these maintenance mistakes and overlook certain things or figure things might not be a big deal and don't do them on time. However, again, it is very important to keep up with your vehicle's maintenance, keep your vehicle running in tip-top shape to avoid any potential damage to your vehicle or your engine, and most importantly, for your personal safety of yourself, passengers, and other drivers on the road. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump straight into some of the most common maintenance mistakes that can hurt your engine, vehicle, and safety. Number one on the list, we have oil change intervals that are too long or just skipping oil changes in general. This one's pretty obvious when it comes to oil change intervals. Manufacturers recommend what oil you should use, what oil weight, whether it has any certain certifications or ratings, like BMW, for example, with their LL01 oils, and how often you should change the oil. All of these are very important to follow. In some cases, manufacturers might actually recommend an oil change interval that is too high for most drivers. A lot of the times on modern vehicles with synthetic oils, you'll see recommended oil change intervals in the ballpark of about 7,000 to 12,000 miles. Now, synthetic oils have come a long way really in the last couple decades, and these oils do last a lot longer than they used to. So it's certainly not true that you have to change your oil every 3,000 miles or so, like was common in the past, especially back in the 90s and earlier 2000s. Nowadays, oil certainly can and does last quite a bit longer. However, following those 7,000 to 12,000 mile oil change intervals, depending on your vehicle, might not always be best for you personally. Manufacturers do have some reason to extend the oil change interval and the service intervals, and that's because it makes the vehicle look cheaper to own and maintain. These oil change intervals might be fine if you're doing mostly highway driving, and especially if that highway driving is long distance, 100, 200 mile trips at a time, then certainly extending those oil change intervals and sticking with the top end or the manufacturer's recommendation won't hurt. However, a lot of us do much shorter trips, have a lot more stop and go, and in those cases, it's often best to go ahead and change your oil even a couple thousand miles ahead of the recommended oil change interval. So a lot of the times if your vehicle recommends 10,000 miles for the oil changes, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and do that oil change every roughly 7,000 to 8,000 miles. Moving on to the second maintenance mistake that a lot of people make is ignoring the check engine light or other vehicle warning lights. This one is very basic and straightforward. However, most long-term vehicle owners are probably guilty of this at some point or another. I know I am personally, even though I'm talking about it and stay on top of my vehicle's maintenance. There have certainly been times during busy weeks where the check engine light pops on, then you run through the basics, nothing looks out of place, the vehicle's driving fine, you still have full power, you don't have a rough idle, everything seems okay, and it's easy in those situations to say, okay, I don't have any noticeable problems, I'll ignore the check engine light and circle back to it when the kind of week slows down and I have a little bit more time. When you don't have any symptoms, sometimes this might be okay. However, there are serious engine problems that can cause potential damage if you leave them alone, and it's possible for some of those issues to not cause any symptoms, especially early on. So it still is incredibly important to check out that check engine light or whatever warning light you may be receiving. That is the vehicle indicating that it is detecting a problem, and a lot of the times it's not just going to disappear on its own. So have an OBD2 scanner on hand. Go ahead and pull the codes. That will at least give you an idea as to what's going on and how serious it might be. If you have an engine misfire, that is a relatively minor issue. Driving the vehicle with a small misfire for another week or two is likely okay and won't cause any damage. But even something simple like that, leaving that alone for months at a time, misfires can cause additional fuel to pass through the catalytic converters, which can wear those down quicker and ultimately lead to an expensive repair bill. So ultimately, don't ignore any check engine lights or warning lights. Make sure you at least have an OBD2 scanner, pull the codes, see what the issue is, and make a determination as to whether it is something that's potentially safe to drive, have to run your errands for the next couple days before you can can get into the shop, or if it's something more serious that indicates that you should not drive the vehicle at all until the issue is resolved. Moving on to the third maintenance mistake that can hurt your engine, we have driving on bald or old tires. So the first part of this is very simple. Bald tires, they have tread ratings and tread depths for a reason. When you get down below that, the tire is no longer safe to drive on, and obviously at that point you should certainly change those tires. Everything from acceleration to braking, cornering, etc. becomes more dangerous on bald tires and increases the risk of something going wrong, you having an accident or a tire blowing out or whatever the case, and that's especially true and can be further exacerbated when driving in worse conditions, like on snow, ice, wet roads, anything like that. Having bald tires can be very dangerous. Circling back to the second part of this, driving on old tires, this is a much lesser known fact, but tires actually don't last forever. They're typically designed to last for about 6 to 8 years when installed on a vehicle. If you're taking them off of the vehicle and properly storing them in a cool, dry place, then tires can last 10 plus years. However, again, oftentimes when installed on a vehicle and just sitting around, usually about 6 to 8 years is the absolute maximum lifespan for a tire. And that can be important nowadays where we have some tires that last 80,000 miles with their tread wear ratings. If you don't drive the vehicle enough, it's very possible that tire is too old and outdated and just aged and worn down, even if it still seems to have plenty of tread depth left. Again, every 6 to 8 years is a good time to replace your tires, even if they have treads left on them. Moving on to maintenance mistake number 4, we have driving on an overheating engine. Overheating is one of the most serious and most sudden issues that your engine can run into. A lot of the times when your vehicle begins overheating, it's due to a severe loss of coolant or a significant cooling system issue or failure. A lot of the times a water pump failure can lead to this very rapid overheating as coolant flow is lost, and that allows the engine to overheat incredibly quickly. So in these cases, within a matter of minutes, the engine can reach temperatures that are unsustainable and that can ultimately lead to cracked head gaskets, warped cylinder heads, warped engine blocks, and even potentially bottom end damage. So driving on an overheated engine, even just for a few minutes, depending on what the issue is and how serious the overheating may be, it could be within a matter of minutes that you cause thousands and thousands of dollars of damage to your engine and potentially even cause complete engine failure if you do not address the overheating as soon as possible. So if you notice that your engine is starting to overheat while you're driving, pull over somewhere safe as soon as possible, shut the engine off, and wait to have the vehicle towed. Don't play around with overheating because, again, this is a very serious issue. Moving on to our fifth and final maintenance mistake that can hurt your engine, we have neglecting other basic maintenance. So number one in this video, I talked about oil changes and oil change intervals, and that's one of the most important fluids in your vehicle and really one of the most important maintenance items in general. However, there are a lot of other service intervals and maintenance items on a vehicle that should be followed, everything from your brake fluid to your transmission fluid, power steering fluid, your engine coolant, timing belts, spark plugs, etc. There are a lot of parts that are standard wear and tear items, and there's a reason they have service intervals and maintenance recommendations around those parts. So that's all equally as important to follow, as neglecting any of that maintenance can cause additional damage, cause problems with the vehicle that could ultimately lead to expensive repair bills. So just make sure you're familiar and aware of your vehicle's recommended maintenance and service intervals and stay on top of all of that when the time comes. And it's often a good idea to start inspecting some of that kind of stuff a year or two before it's even due for service. Anyway, guys, that wraps up our video for today. If you appreciated the content, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more in the future. Thanks, everyone.